Today on Outside of the Box, Christine is talking to a lot of the movers and shakers of the creature combat events in the BattleBots community.
Stalker is much more of a robot. I tell it what direction to go, and it just does it. Stalker is a reason for me to learn math.
They invited me down and asked me if I wanted to drive, and didn't know anything about their robot. And I'm now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
I actually made the transmitter and the robot both controlled with Arduino, so I wrote the code that was used to talk between the two of them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And you know, for those that have watched the show for a while, you could say that this type of episode was a long time coming. I've certainly talked about walker bots more on the smaller level, but this is a great opportunity to talk about the large scale ones that we're now going to start seeing at BattleBots. And I can't think of any better way to kick off this episode than have somebody on that I have had on my wish list for guests for quite some time. And that is Mark Setrakian. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Christine. It's really cool to be here. Really cool.
It's very cool for me. I think that, you know, as somebody who loves all robots that are just, you know, cool or different, certainly your style of building fits that bill. So I want to talk about, you know, this new class, but before we get into that, you know, I want to talk about you and, you know, your career building robots. And I think the first question that I have is, what drew you to this specific style of robot, like going all the way back to when you built Megadon? Like, what was it about that made you say, this is something that I want to build?
I guess it really comes from my career started out as a puppeteer. And I've always loved that experience of making a machine that functions like a living thing, you know. So like making creatures for movies and the idea of doing humanoid robots or robots that are like animals. My first experience in fighting robots was, of course, Robot Wars, which was started by my colleague from ILM, Mark Thorpe. And my first robot was the Master, and it was like I think kind of like a BattleBot now. It had wheels, it had a saw, it had a lifting arm, it had some weapons on it. But the second robot that I made for Robot Wars was a snake. And it was this very weird, and I even have the controller here somewhere, this very weird robot. And the first robot that I made for BattleBots, when BattleBots debuted in 1999, was Megadon. And the reason I did that, the reason I wanted to make something so strange for the very beginning of BattleBots was to try to set the tone and say, okay, look, we can make stuff that's completely different from the archetypes of what we've come to know as BattleBots. You know, we look at the great builders like Christian Karlberg and Donald Hutson. Christian in particular did the horizontal bar spinner, the vertical bar spinner, the center mounted horizontal bar spinner, like all these different, the drum spinner, like all these different ideas. And I loved that. I loved the idea of like exploring what was possible. And for me, Megadon was that, but it was also completely impractical, you know, just like just like this thing that was designed to go into the box and just create chaos. You know, that it could walk, but it could also do this weird like Death Blossom thing where the legs are all spinning in different directions. So it's just how I'm wired, Christine. That's all I can say. I'm drawn to those things. And I think that maybe what happened was I had such a satisfying early success at Robot Wars that the idea of designing to win was too restrictive. I felt like, yes, I could design to win. I know how to make a bot that can win a match, but I want to do more than that. And I think that I succeeded with Megadon because Megadon, you know, wasn't ever really a successful fighting machine, but everyone loved it. and it became, a point of inspiration for a lot of people. And that was what I was trying to do.
Right. It's iconic. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. You mentioned Christian Carlberg, who, is absolutely one of my favorite builders. Overkill is one of my favorite robots of all time. Again, impractical. Looks really cool in the box, but not the most practical robot that there is. But I think that kind of explores the idea. It's really a lot of like what this show is about. It's called Outside of the Box for a reason. Creativity is kind of paramount. And I think that if you're not thinking creatively, you're restricting the bounds of what you can do. And so I think that that's really exciting. Now, one of the things that I saw about Stalker in particular was how you were saying that you kind of designed it with a different, like goal or like ideas than what you did with Mechadon, because Mechadon was more meant to be like just a giant weapon, whereas Stalker is not that. It's a little bit more precision based.
Yeah. So the big difference between Stalker and Mechadon is that since then I've learned how to code, and coding has completely changed the way I approach everything now. So at the time when I was controlling Mechadon had 12 servos, and I was running it with this double radio, like 2 Futaba radios, and I was like double fisting this thing and literally like puppeteering it. So every motion of every joint was something that I had to like coordinate in my head. It was exhausting to drive it. So Stalker is much more of a robot. I tell it what direction to go, and it just does it. So it has a walking algorithm. It has all this code that I've cobbled together. It was, and I've said this before, Stalker is a reason for me to learn math. And I did a lot of that. So, success. Yay, I've learned some math. It's kind of emboldened me now to think about, okay, so what would I build for the bots? And what ideas and techniques have I honed working on Stalker that I can then bring to a robot that could potentially actually compete? And at Destructathon a few weeks ago, they had a sort of these trials, these like walker trials. It's a modest little event, but Donald Hutson was there, and he had a 4-legged walker, and I brought Stalker along to demo. And Donald did this test match against these 2 Unitree dogs. It was very interesting. His robot is about 100 pounds. The Stalker is about 70 pounds. I hadn't really thought about this until I was like looking at this event that Donald had engineered in his mind, and he had come up with this whole thing. And I'm like, oh no, this is actually great, because the actuators, how they work, how expensive they are, how big they are, how much they weigh, kind of is in a sweet spot around 100 pounds. So maybe this is a whole other walking class that we can explore. I'm probably like just shooting my mouth off totally here. But it really got me thinking about all the different ways that walking robots could make their way into BattleBots, not just robots like Mechadon and Arachnophobia. And I spent quite a lot of time talking to John Abbott about Arachnophobia. It's very cool. And I'm like looking at what he's built. It's like, okay, I'm familiar with a lot of these problems. I'm familiar with a lot of the things he's having to figure out now. And he will figure them out, and he'll get that thing working. But building a walker is not like building a normal BattleBot. It's all of that times however many legs you have, plus even more. It's not for everyone. But it's and again, you have to be passionate about the fight, and not so much passionate about winning. But that's so I've kind of gone a very long way around your question. The short answer is, yeah, Stalker is different. And interestingly enough, as I think about building something for BattleBots that walks, I'm really looking back at the way Mechadon was designed, and how a lot of the way it walks was engineered into its mechanical structure. And that's not the case with Stalker. Stalker is very generic. It has legs with 80 degrees of freedom. It has all this freedom to move around. And the thing that I'm trying to coalesce is somewhere in between the two.
Yeah, I think that that makes sense. Now, since you're talking about like looking at building something that would be maybe competitive, like a a 250-pound version of this, I want to talk a little bit about the scalability, because that's something we talk a lot about in combat robotics, and
It's
how
tough.
is it to scale that up?
Right. Well, to give you some perspective, so Stalker weighs 77 pounds. Mechadon weighed 750 pounds. So, and in the context of its debut in 1999, there weren't enough rules around what you could or could not build that would keep it out of the event. It's like, okay, it's a walker. Well, it gets a weight bonus. How much of a weight bonus does it get? Well, it weighs 750 pounds. Okay, well, we're going to give you a 750-pound weight bonus. At the moment, Arachnophobia, I believe, weighs something like 350. So it's like if more than two people, ideally more than two, but if two people build robots that are well scaled to fight each other, you've got to fight, right? It's not much. Maybe it would be better if there were four people. But I feel like as we get back into the thought of bringing walking robots back into BattleBots, to be very, very thoughtful about, like I found I still have parts of Snake and Mechadon, and they're insane. I can't lift them by myself. It's ridiculous. I don't know how the hell I made that stuff. I really don't, looking back on it. I don't want to make a 750-pound robot. I'd rather make something that's small, like this little guy back here. So as I think about what's practical for BattleBots, I'm kind of just thinking about, well, for me, I don't want them to be so heavy. The other thing that I'm aware of, I think we're all kind of aware of, is that when you watch the show live, it's just the most amazing thing ever. When you see it on TV, it's really hard to tell how big the robots are. It's really hard to tell that they weigh 250 pounds. It's hard to get that. And when I was watching Donald's 100-pound robot tussling with these Xenotree robots, and when I watch a video of Stalker walking around, you can't tell how big it is. So it's like, well, maybe they can be a little smaller. So it has to be accessible for people. It has to be affordable. It has to be sustainable. And it's really tough to do that. The servos in Stalker are expensive. The servos in Mechadon were expensive. I only built one. I didn't build, a bunch of parts to have like spare parts for Mechadon, which is why it doesn't really exist anymore. The robot that Donald built, he did a really good job. He has two chassis. It's very impressive. That's expensive. It's hard to do that. So I think the team that built Armageddon, I think, were very smart about how they went about it. I think they are really focusing on sustainability, and I would like to learn from them how they're approaching that and think about, okay, how can that sustainability, meaning reasonable cost, reasonable weight. It's like this. It's exciting because I feel like a small kind of builder community within BattleBots is starting to coalesce around the idea of walking, and I want sharing of ideas to inform what we all wind up building. So that's kind of.
I think it's really exciting. I'm curious to get your ideas about, I know you said smaller size, but about the ability to scale down. And the reason why I say that is because there have been a couple of folks who have, I would say, made a decent attempt at making a walker robot at like the 3-pound beetle weight level. But like the ability to do that and to make it work, because, I'm not, by no means, I'm not an expert at building robots, even though I've built one. But to me, I would think that you would need more weight in it to, like, at least a little bit more weight to make it viable. But I'm curious to get your thoughts about that.
Well, I'd love to see the 3-pound walker, see what that looks like. I can tell you that it's fairly easy, relatively speaking, to make a 3-pound walker. I've done that for various projects, and as they get bigger, they get heavier and they get more expensive, and they get like exponentially heavier and more expensive. So I don't know that I could even make a stalker at like a 700-pound stalker. I'm not even sure that's possible. And we kind of get back to like the affordability part of it. So the 100-pound robot that Donald made and stalker at 77 pounds, let's say we put a little armor on there and bring it up to 100 pounds. That's kind of in a sweet spot of what's available commercially to power the robot with. But I actually love making smaller, lighter robots, and having maybe not at BattleBots, but to have events that invite, somewhere between like 3 and 10-pound robots, and making that the limit. I think that's very reasonable and not a bad idea to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like kind of how BattleBots is developing this walker class, I think that could be interesting for the smaller levels as well, because, unfortunately, when you get something that has legs and then you get like a horizontal spinner, like a tombstone style robot,
right.
It presents a big target with just going for the leg. So I was
right.
kind of curious to think, get your thoughts on that.
Well, it brings up the really good question, which is, do we expect walking robots and regular BattleBots to go up against each other? So Chomp went up against normal BattleBots, and that was not great for Chomp. So, and not only that, but just the design limitations around what they had to do to make it even practical to try to put it into a match against some kind of horizontal spinner, for example, was super restricting. So if you have enough people making them, then should it just be walker against walker? I think that makes a lot of sense, to have walkers against walkers. I've certainly thought about the possibility of like, what could happen if you built walking robots that were designed to go up against regular BattleBots? I just don't know how fun that would be for anyone. It would be super, super challenging to do that. So, but I don't know, maybe it's possible.
That's true in the world of combat robotics, for sure. I'm also curious, because you talked about it a little bit, but how much your work in special effects has influenced your robot building and vice versa, because those two things, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also differences, and I think that there's that level of creativity in both, obviously.
Yeah, I would say that my experience at BattleBots has hugely affected my professional work. And it's like once you've been trained, by experience in combat robotics, you don't look at materials the same anymore. You don't look at metal the same as you maybe once did. We think about a piece of paper. You can write on it. You can fold it into a paper airplane. You can make things out of it. You can do origami, but you can also tear it with your bare hands into pieces. So we have a very clear expectation of how strong is it? What are its limitations? But for most people, when you pick up a piece of metal, it's like, this is indestructible. Metal is not indestructible. You go into the BattleBox and it's like cottage cheese. The things that happen in the BattleBox are so shocking. And once you've experienced that, it changes your perspective on your intuitive expectation of how materials are going to behave. So that has really changed the way I do my work. And the result is that, I'll build a robot. I built a robot for Disneyland, and the first day they tested it out, it was a robotic Spider-Man they throw in the air. So it goes like 65 feet in the air. And the first time we tested the full-scale version, it bounced off the backstop, missed the net, and landed on the ground. But I kind of thought that was going to happen, and I had built it, so I knew how to repair it. I knew how to replace the pieces that were going to break. It broke where I wanted it to, and all of that comes from BattleBots experience. Yes, obviously, my love of making performing characters like puppet characters totally influences the BattleBots and the robots that I make, whether they're for BattleBots or just for fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I think honestly, like that combat robotics needs that element. I'm very much one of those people that even though I have an appreciation for the robots that are just metal boxes that do a lot of damage because that's
Yeah.
fun to see, I also really like to see that level of creativity and innovation in designs, which I actually wanted to ask you, the last season of BattleBots that aired on TV, obviously there was a lot of, what we would call meta breaking that happened in that season with having robots like Huge and Sawblaze, obviously like doing very well. What were your thoughts seeing like that meta breaking stuff happening and seeing robots break through who had iterated again and again and finally saw that success on a design that may not have been what the normal robot is?
I love that. I'm such a big fan of Sawblaze, of Huge, of Mammoth, of these really creative, complicated, difficult robots. I mean, Sawblaze it's got moving parts. It has a flamethrower. It has all this stuff, and they still have to get that within the same weight that everyone else does. Same with Mammoth. How do they do it? How do they make it that big and still have it be the weight that it is? One of my favorite matches of all time was Mammoth versus Huge, where do you know the match I'm talking about? Where it was like they turned off gravity and Huge, Mammoth is just like levitating. It's like, what the hell is going on in this? What am I seeing? That kind of inspired Stalker in some ways, because it's just like, wow, I just saw something insane. I want to do that. I want to make something insane. It's actually very gratifying when a robot like Sawblaze does well. Wins matches against robots that are much more efficient and simple and to the point. And those efficient and simple and to the point robots are excellent robots. And I think any builder will say, if you get into the red square or the blue square, and when they say robots activate and it actually moves around, that is a huge accomplishment. You should be very proud that you've gotten to that point, because it is not easy to get to that point. The next part, fighting your opponent and either winning or losing, well, that's going to happen. You're going to fight your opponent, and it's either going to win or lose. But the first battle, the biggest battle, is getting into that square and moving. And for a robot like Huge or Sawblaze or Mammoth, they really had to solve a lot of problems of their own creation. It's like when you make something complicated, it's your own fault that it's complicated, but you're doing it for a reason. Same with like Mechadon. It's my own fault that the robot is big and complicated and can't win fights. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was to make something insane. So.
Exactly. Now I'm curious, like with that in mind, because personally, that was one of my favorite seasons of BattleBots, period.
Yeah.
Because I just thought that like that aspect was great. There were so many like unexpected things that happened in the season, way different than what I'd seen before. What do you think that like looks like for the future of combat robotics? Do we need to have that healthy blend of like, yes, having those robots that can hit and destroy, but also having that level of creativity that makes you look at something and go, wow, I've never seen anything like that before?
It's crucial. You have to have that. Otherwise, I mean, this is going to sound a little bit disrespectful, but oftentimes I watch clips from BattleBots, and there's nothing in the frame that tells me what season I'm looking at. It's Witch Doctor versus Hypershock, and they're both excellent robots, and they're both having it out. It's like I don't know which season I'm looking at. Which year was this? What's happening? So without even innovation that fails, I think is crucial to the sport. And I would never use the word fail. I think anytime you have something innovative going into the BattleBots, it's a win. It's a win for everyone, whether the robot wins or not, because it shows us that the sport is alive. If the robots all start to look alike and function alike, then we've stagnated.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I guess my last question that I ask a lot of builders, but I'm really curious to hear your answer, is that if you could build a combat robot and there was no limitation on money at all, what does that look like?
Oh, well, I would probably build. I would do a Christian Carlberg, and I would build a small fleet of robots, all different designs, and I would like sponsor a bunch of teams, and not even and you know, it would be like you know, my intern from a few years ago, like it's just all these people that I love, and like have all these teams, and like support them, and provide resources. I wouldn't do it for myself. I would basically just like become this sort of BattleBot sugar daddy, and just you know, sponsor a bunch of innovative teams, you know, and spread it out, and not just have like one ridiculous expensive robot, but just like let my brain explode and make a bunch of different things and try to get it all in there.
I love that answer so much, because I think, like, honestly, growing the sport and getting more people interested oftentimes just starts with putting a controller in someone's hand, and then they
Yes.
realize how much fun it is and they want to
Right.
keep doing it. I know that's certainly what happened with me. I had been doing the podcast for a while, but then finally got my hands on driving a robot, and I was like, wow, this is actually a lot of fun.
Right? Yeah, it's amazing.
So yeah, I think sometimes it just starts there. So that's a truly amazing answer. Well, we have lots more to talk about in this episode, including a lot of the robots that you mentioned, you know, that were in the little walker event and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to continue the conversation about that. But we got things started off on a really good foot. So I appreciate you so much, Mark. It has been so great talking to you about this, and I hope that anyone who's watching this has certainly learned something from this conversation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, if you're watching this, stay tuned. Much more Walker conversation to come. So keep watching. All right, we are back on this episode. As you may have seen so far, this is a pretty jam-packed episode with just some amazing people in the world of robots, and we're talking about creature combat today, walker bots, all of that good stuff. And so for my guests on this segment, I have Donald Hutson, and Arthon Greenspan, who are part of the Kuja team. And I also have Trey Roski here from BattleBots. So we're going to talk about creature combat. So welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure. So first of all, I want to go to you, Trey, because when I first heard about creature combat was, I think, the last time that I had you on the show, when we were talking and you mentioned that, like, you know, about walker robots and everything. And I immediately was very excited about this because, you know, I know some builders at the smaller weight classes who have been working on these things. And I was like, this is a really cool idea. Tell me more about, like, the process of developing this into a concept for BattleBots.
Okay, well, as you probably know, we started by allowing walkers into BattleBots. And the idea there was we'd give a weight bonus if the robot walked. And the weight bonus was up to an additional 250 pounds, but it varied depending on the engineering of the robot, the weapon of the robot, the way it walked, all kinds of factors that would factor into what weight bonus we'd give you. So you would go up against the rollers that were locked in at 250 pounds, and you got a weight bonus, and you could build it and go into, you know, that weight class, a standard weight class, and compete at BattleBots. Chomp built it. Zoe Stevens built one that was way cool. One of the most amazing robots I've seen. It didn't do that great. We didn't expect it. I guess I was expecting more out of it. I was hopeful, knowing how, you know, their weapon worked and everything else.
Hold on. Didn't it take out Fight Force with one autonomous swing?
That was the roller, though. That was the first Chomp, not the second Chomp.
Oh, you're
not the
right.
walking chomp, but it did take out a few people, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, that hammer went so quick that 500-pound robot would lift off the ground about 2 feet just with the movement of the hammer, and that was pretty amazing. Anyway, Mark Setrakian thought it would be better to actually start a walking weight class at 250 pounds, and they just go against each other, so they wouldn't go into the rolling weight class, and that is kind of the motivation and how it kind of started. And Mark built Stalker in hopes to make the future of this beginning of the walking weight class. We had a few conversations with everybody, the whole gang, Donald and a bunch of other people that even the Waiachi family, that are all interested in building these walkers. And we talked a few times, and Donald kind of pushed us all over the edge and said, he built his humanoid creature, 4-legged creature. People think it resembles a dog. We're not fighting dogs, so we don't want it to be. But anyway, it's really cool. And so Donald said, hey, why don't I challenge some of your Unitree dogs? The Unitree is a Chinese company that I've had one of their dogs in the BattleBots show for a long time now, at the Go One. And it's kind of a stage presence. It does some stuff with the slot machine and various other things. The crowd absolutely loves it. I put some googly eyes on it and some hair. The kids were
Now, this is where I got to interject. The first thing I seen, Christine, was that this was the perfect opportunity. He loved these little dogs. He was having fun with them. They were part of his show. And the best way to kind of put a little catalyst in there is to let him know that one might die. He took the bait.
Donald said, I want to cut one of those in half. So, although he did cut into it a little, it didn't cut it in half. It's still got a challenge. But so, we, Donald, built a, what was it, 70 pounds, 80 pounds, something like that?
No, I'm 100, I'm 100 pounds flat.
Are you 100? Okay, yeah. And so we figured 2 Unitree dogs could go against Donald's because they only weigh about 20 pounds or something. And we added some weaponry to them and some effect. And it was kind of, the first time was to try to play and figure out what the game is, because we figured there's more to this game than just battling. And so Donald came up with some great ideas, and we tried them, and they kind of worked. And so we're still looking for that gameplay. We're still not sure who won. we got to review the tape and decide. And the edit is supposedly done, or was supposed to be done yesterday. I have not seen it yet, but I hear that it's really, really good. So it better perform. But when they come and tell me it's really, really good, they're usually right on. So I'm kind of excited to see it here, hopefully released today, probably, or tomorrow. So you can have your team kind of review it and decide who won. I think. Anyway, I think it's really cool. I think it's it's much more difficult to do, and it's kind of interesting comparing it to. So I've been playing, and Unitree gracefully left me one of their latest and greatest boxing, kickboxing, punchboxing robots, a G1, stands on 2 legs. Absolutely amazing. They came and demonstrated it to the UFC guys, and I forget that guy's name. Some fancy person.
Last week you fought,
and
didn't you actually go to?
Well, and then the UFB, which is this new boxing humanoid 2-legged standing group, really neat group. Really, they're kind of special people in what they're trying to do and how they're trying to put it together. I'm very, very impressed. They have a few different styles of humanoids, walking, biped, 2-legged robots, and put on a boxing contest. I think this was their 4th one. It was just last week in Los Angeles, in Venice Beach. And they invited me down and asked me if I wanted to drive. And basically I had no practice and didn't know anything about their robot. And I'm now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of light bulbs went off in my head.
Hey,
And
Trey,
it's, yeah.
oh, I was going to say, how do you think it would do against a dog?
Well, that's a good question. Probably trip over the dog. Yeah,
Huh.
I don't know. The neat, I don't know. There's a lot of, obviously this has been in BattleBots' dream for a long time, right? To have creature type robots, multi-legged type robots, and two-legged biped humanoids.
Yeah.
For a long time, and it's always been in our sights, and it's getting closer and closer. I don't know if you know this, but I am the reason Mr. Elon Musk decided to build walking robots. I am to blame for that.
You talked him into it?
I'm the one who talked him into it, basically.
That's good. Did he know we were going to put saws on them and attack each other?
I'm sure that went through his mind. So Optimus is, I am to blame for Optimus. And if you ever interview Elon, he will tell you the whole story behind it.
We all have our little moments. You poked his bear, and I poked yours, right?
Yes.
And I definitely poked Mark Setrakian. That was exactly another point, as I thought he had a robot that was in the right weight class. I thought you had a bunch of friends at Unitree, which would give you walking robots to your liking. Basically, you definitely have an upper hand if you have off-the-shelf Chinese robots that box and do taekwondo. It's almost like picking up objects is almost too easy for you. Until another creature combat and a drone are screwing with you, right? Maybe that's where this is all going. We all want to have these type of robots follow a dream, which, like as Trey said, it was like Mark Thorpe's dream to art imitating TV. I always remember him saying that. It sticks in my head every time. He's like, we really just look at it and just hope something amazing happens that we could talk about later. And it's like going to watch a movie or a comedy show, which is totally unscripted, and you just hope it all works out, and it usually does. And I think when we talk legged and anthropomorphic type robots, it's been so hard to even commit to this idea. It's complex. We don't even have enough money to buy two. We sure as hell don't want to sign up for a prize fight if we're not able to at least bring two robots. So the line between where we want to go and what I think is interesting, right, is that we've kind of blurred it a little bit right now. Technology's caught up to the dream a little bit. And I think it's a perfect spot for drones. I think it's a perfect spot for 100-pound vehicles, because they can be built by almost anybody. And I think it's the perfect spot for people to build their characters and finally kind of move on with that whole idea of BattleBots. We were supposed to be building our own versions of a knight, a creature. We all have our own dream of what we want to build, but finding the perfect excuse to do it, that's difficult. It takes both sides to happen. And Trey hears me say this all the time. It's always a chicken and the egg. It's like we can talk all day about how cool that would be to have the humanoid fight a drone and Kuja. But until it's so, no one else is going to sign up for it. If they think it's going to be too destructive and not thought out, they're not going to build for it. If they don't think anybody's going to come, they're not going to come for it. So this is the day that I make the gauntlet. Basically, you have me, who's already built a 100-pound robot. You have Mark Setrakian, who's already built a 5-legged stalker robot. You have Trey, who has in his back pocket the leading manufacturer in autonomous robots. We have buddies in high places like Elon Musk, who would love to just come and say hi. This is what is needed in order to get the catalyst going. A time, a place. And the way I look at it, Christine, this is kind of what it's all about. It's about getting it going. And I just want to say thanks to Trey for letting me test, in a way, this whole idea of
I think it was definitely your your persistence in pushing made it happen, because it is a difficult, it's a next level thing to create, to do. But it's cool, and we're at that point where we can do this.
Arthon, how's that software?
Yeah. Oh, it's going pretty good. Definitely that took a lot of time, but yeah, I mean, one day just chilling in my room, I get a call from someone like, "Hey, you want to build a robot dog? You want to help? I got this robot dog in my garage. You want to write some code for it?" And yeah, so I just come over one day, and I don't know what to expect. I see a whole CNC machine and just a dog sitting there on a table, with a little mount for it, and just like, all right, let's give it a shot. And
do you think it made a difference that it was sitting there? Do you think it would have been?
I think so. Oh, yes, 100%.
All this work had I not been able to point to the fact that I was going to do something in short order, and it was sitting in front of you.
Oh, that was huge for it. Like, I mean, yeah, the work ethic was definitely there. I was shocked to see, like, you had like 3 different CAD models pulled up of like, okay, here's the plan. And if we want to do this, we have this, and it's like, just, it was so well laid out, and that definitely inspired me to like really like take advantage of it, because I'm like, you already did all this stuff. Like, I can't let you down. I gotta show what I got, basically.
Yes. And that's how we talk a software engineer into doing really hard work. Thank you for your help. No, I couldn't have did it without Arthon. That's why he's on this call. It's great to talk to your friends and tell them a story that you want to try and do something. It was pretty easy to tell them about my past and maybe what I was planning to do, but it still takes a little bit more to make them believe that you're going to follow through. And I think that's what this world's about. That's what this version of BattleBots is. It's the next level hard. It's going to cost more money. It's going to take more time, but we're going to be more proud of it when we're done. We're going to have more to say, right? And
yeah, and it's going to attract just the different types of people. Like, so there's so many more software people that are going to come in now that there's like all these complex problems, and if you have like humanoids and robots and all these other weird configurations where you have to put math and programming and just unique problem solving to the test, it's going to bring a whole new like group of people into the equation.
I agree, and thank you for that. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this, because I mean, I think that my perspective on BattleBots over time has shifted significantly. I mean, maybe kind of ebbed and flowed, because when I first started watching, I was definitely attracted to any bot that was more unique. And then I kind of started liking the bots that were maybe a little bit more try hard. And then like last season, that blew it all away for me, is, watching robots like Sawblaze and Huge in the finals of BattleBots.
That was awesome.
And just like being impressed with people who have such determination and such passion for like that certain level of innovation to do something different and be able to succeed with it.
It's now, like you stick with your idea, and I think that's what we all do. We all want to build our dream robot, and I'm with you. Out of the best thing of last season's BattleBots was watching Huge and Sawblaze take their designs all the way, and those were both very unique. Came from a ground floor, approach of what they were trying to do, and they implemented it and made it work. And I think complex designs are worth working on. I think it's what we want to brag about. I think more people want excuses to build something unique. And until we give them the Super Bowl or a place to go do it, some place that they feel there's going to be a couple people there, and their next 6 months of talking it up isn't that they're just going to some place. No, they're going to go fight Mark Setrakian, Donald Hutson, and Trey Roski in the evolution of, something new and fun. And I think it's going to bring drone pilots, because they're going to have a place for it. I think simplifying the way the rules work, so it's not just pure destruction. We can build a complex machine and be rewarded for doing that. And that if you can win by grabbing components like these trophies and do the capture the flag part, we call it, right, capture the bull, creature combat, then you've given people another way to win. And you've also assured that the evolution of these designs are going to keep evolving, because I kind of have one plan in place, and that is the winner of the first competition that ever happens. Let's say it's just Trey, Mark, and myself, because nobody else is stupid enough to go do this. Okay. Seriously. And we say, okay, we do it. Well, the winner of that competition for next year's or next event is going to get to decide where the next trophy goes. And it's my belief that putting the nuts and bolts, the trophies that we fight for so dearingly, into unique spots, that we will see people make choices. If they won, let's say Trey wins. Trey has a choice, and this is all about the entire sport. We look for it as a whole to be the solution to it all. We want to drive innovation. We want new robots to show up, and I don't care if they lose. I just want to see some really cool shit show up and give it a shot. So I want to reward everybody for doing that. Now, how you innovate new designs is every year the winner of the tournament within 30 days announces, as we're recapping the footage, where the next trophy will be placed. And at that point, you're pretty much saying to all your peers, this is where I think the sport needs to go. I need to see a washer hung on a hook 6 feet in the air. And that's going to be in the arena. And that's a new trophy that adds for points that if you get it back to your square is another way for you to win. That way, jumping robots, maybe I'll go because my robot's waterproof. I could stick it in a swimming pool. And I could be like, all right, I want to encourage the next version. And now it's bad because it'll look like my robot's waterproof and I'm cinching another point that I could win. So the real question is, will we pick that choice that is best for the sport? Or is it just best for the robot we have? And I think this is the engine I'm looking for in our story. I want people to be rewarded for trying something hard. It's really the only way we can fund these kind of robots. And I believe it's good for a lot of people in the sport that just want an excuse to build something more fun. I really do. So that's kind of my take on the rules. I don't know if when you see the video, you'll see us somewhat trying to grab what looks like a bone, but that's really a bolt and 2 nuts. And there's a big one that goes in the middle. And then there's 2 smaller ones that weigh less, and they're behind us. And basically, Christine, the points are simple. There's a 4th category added for damage, aggression, and strategy. And that 4th category, at the end of the match, when it goes to judge's decision, if that's what happens, or during the match, you're scoring more points by bringing you're still fighting, but because you're going to have to pass each other to do this. You're still going to have to fight. But maybe you don't fight as much. Maybe you're just dodging the other robot and getting the pieces. And maybe that's how that guy wins more, because he was more agile. He had a clever way to get around. It wasn't just a big fat robot sitting still. All the things that we want to see in the evolution of the robots evolve from the environment. It's robotic Darwinism. And all I've done is add food. That's really all I've done. In the simplest form, I want us, the humanoids, the legged robots, and the drones to all fight from the same food bowl and work together as a team, maybe to make it more interesting in case one robot breaks. The drones and maybe the other dogs, like Trey has 2 dogs, so he's a little bit more secure on. And if I'm not mistaken, he was pretty good at picking up those bones.
It was definitely an interesting gameplay and interesting challenge, and I see it evolving. And if you look back in the way it started, with Robot Wars, none of it was figured out. That first year and first event, it all about dialing in and figuring out what was going to work and what wasn't going to work and what the ideas were. Nobody knew back then what to make, and everybody was there just to have fun. And we're kind of back at that spot, and I really like that. A lot of people come to BattleBots now to win, and this kind of brings it back home. To let's just have some fun and make our art pieces and show them off and see how they do. And it's a new, much more creative challenge. I got to thank Donald and Mark Setrakian and everybody for for pushing to do this. And, you know, I can see it going, especially now with all the talk and the walking humanoids and everything else that are becoming more and more available.
Yeah, we pretty much can have a robot announcer. I still think you ought to put Bill Dwyer behind that robot.
Yeah.
So Christine, I talked a lot. Do you have any other questions? I'm sorry, I just was trying to lay out what it was.
I am curious though, like to talk a little bit about like why this is its own separate division. And I mean, I know why, but I think like for the audience, it's important to understand that, because like for me, I've seen fights between I don't know, you may be aware of this, but the drone that used to be with whatchamacallit,
Spitfire.
with
Spitfire.
yeah, Spitfire what came to NHRL and fought against just like other 3-pound robots. And it's one of those things that like watching a robot like that against a spinner, it's funny the first couple of times, and it's funny when somebody's like, I'm gonna attach a rake to it and knock it down. But then after that, it's just, it has lost its appeal. And I think that watching like drones and, you know, these dog style robots and everything else like that, it just adds a much more interesting mix to it. And
Yeah,
so I kind of want to talk about that aspect of like having the separate division instead of just like sending a drone up against like Minotaur or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to answer this is that the robots are designed for a specific job. And the drones never fit because they didn't weigh enough, and they couldn't, without entrapment and entanglement on their side, they really could do no more than you know, stick with the guy, put some flamethrower, be really cool. But so they kind of haven't had a way to contribute. But you know, and then the dogs and the legged robots and a spider, you take Mark's robot, my robot. Luckily, I got High Tech, which is a local San Diego company, very big RC company, making servos. They offered to give me the servos. So the servos are quite expensive. The software is quite expensive. And a one-hit shot by a kinetic weapon would be great for you guys. That's how I'm going to say it. It's not good for me because there's no defense for me. I have nothing. It's just, I might as well just pick it up and throw it outside a 30-story building and let you guys film it hit the ground. Because it's just not right, and it's not fair. So I think when Chomp did it, I was so excited. They put the most strongest challenge I'd ever seen. They did pneumatic antagonistic legs. They dropped their shield down to the ground. I thought they were going to pull off, you know, an amazing upset with that design, with that extra weight bonus. But it's still just not enough. What we want to build, like all the money they put into that, and then you take, you know, Mark has, he plays with expensive servos all the time, so he was very easily able to build Stalker and all the other giant robots he's built in the past as well. I personally have had to struggle with each one, trying to kick myself in the head. Why I keep trying to build a big walking legged or humanoid. Why do I still want to do this? And I think it's because I want to do it. I want to learn, just like Mark started doing it. You want to learn more about the kinematics. I also wanted to advance my knowledge into the world of legged robots, and I want to build more complex machines that I get to try. I think the attraction here to keep it as a single class is pretty straightforward. The only way it could happen is if there's more than one robot. Mark started it by building one at around 100 pounds. I took the bait, found a sponsor. I was originally building one that was 250, and I decided that it was smarter for me to downscale the robot and build it to Mark's size and work through all the software, right, Arthon? That was kind of our goal.
I think, yeah, you point out a huge thing is that the community, like one of the greatest advantages of having like a walker class is the community is built and dedicated around this goal that is not necessarily the most like, oh, how do I like just win in the most optimal, but we're building towards like something great, like just the things that we want to learn and be interested in, get better at. Like the most mesmerizing thing to me that weekend is there was 3 other teams that I could just walk over to and talk to, and they all went through the same challenges and that we all had to like figure out the same things, and none of our solutions were even remotely close. So we talked for hours, like especially with Mark. Literally, it was like, okay, so how did you do this? How did you? And it was things like I can't talk to like most other people about this for hours. There's really only a few places in the world where you can just go and like nerd out in that particular way for such a long period of time. And it was just like I learned so much from them because none of our like solutions to this problem were even remotely similar in any way, but they all worked. And so there's many like disadvantages and disadvantages to how we all approach the same problem. And now we can like work together and share our information and like make everyone better at this to make the sport better. And having a Walker class just really emphasizes, oh, let's all work together on this greater goal, both from a hardware perspective and from a software perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're playing with big corporations, right? And that build all kinds of advanced robots. They definitely are moving. Yeah, I could probably just go get a bunch of Unitrees and fight them, but where would be the fun in that, right? Don't you want to see me build a big dog-looking thing with jaws and a chop saw, Christine?
I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, and a lot of the off-the-shelf ones, they lose their balance. They fall over. They got to flip over. I think early on in this match, you'll see with Trey, we set out some pretty basic rules. It was basically capture the bolts. And we were like, all right, let's just see if we can each steal each other's bolts. So Trey didn't get his grippers installed on his dogs. So he put magnets and forks. And personally, I thought that was a little too easy. I think every robot should have to have a gripper, okay, and show that you can pick up a trophy and carry it to the center of the arena, right? Because it's a proof that you can walk and you can get the trophy if you have to. If that's all you can do, you got to at least drive your robot, right? And so anyway, as he took that approach, we put these little walls, and the whole idea was not to change the arena. We just wanted to go out there, put the game pieces, and put a square of that kept us in a box. But what Trey didn't realize, and when you see the video, it's really funny. He does what I expected him to do. He puts a paintball gun, a flamethrower, a chainsaw. He loaded up the entire top of the robot so much that it runs out full speed, twice as fast as I can move, right? I slowed the speed of my robot down just to be safe, just to make sure it worked. I did not run it fast. And so I hobble out there. He pretty much falls over, gets trapped against the barrier, and he just laid there, just waiting for me. He basically said, Donald, like he knew I wanted to cut him in half. And so I did 5 little baby incisions to remind him just how important invertibility is. Just enough, just to let him know the same rules of BattleBots still apply. We have to work out all the problems amongst ourselves about the robot being nimble, flipping over, not getting stuck against the wall. So in the second round, we called it. It was lame. It was basically just they were sitting there, couldn't get over. I couldn't flip them back over, so we called it. First round, basic, right? We just basically were like, okay, the walls sucked. His legs got stuck in the floor in the saws that we kind of put the arena by. And so we learned, right? And we took that, and then we came back the next time. They stripped off all the extra weight. They slowed down the robot. They put better tools to get the bones. And I could tell that the sport grew that day. Between the day before and the day after, Trey realized that we were both still trying to do the same thing. We wanted to have a cool way of beating the other guy. But it was really, was it going to play out as a good match, a knockdown, drag out, good old-fashioned blacksmith minotaur kind of battle? That's what needs to happen for it to be successful. It doesn't really matter what the robots are. It just matters that we keep going to 3 minutes. And in the last match that you see, we did 2. We did not get a chance to do 3 because we're short on time, mainly my fault. But we did the second match. We went all 3 minutes. And we go through the entire gamut. We take down the walls. And we believe that we can have invisible walls, but if you cross over the blue lines, they are minus against those points you got for the bones. And each bone at the end of the match is added up. And all it is for every quarter of the arena you've moved those bones, you get a point. and that, or whatever point scale that is, and that'll mix in just right, in just the right way with strategy, aggression, and damage. And that way we're not complicating things. We're saying, look, here's 100 pounds. You probably should get something to grab these devices, or you could try and kick my ass, but I might go get those pieces. And that's also a way that I could heavily win, is if I do that and I kind of fight with you. I think that's where I hope it kind of lopsides itself, to encourage, and maybe even a fourth criteria, which is audience. Were you trying something difficult? Where's the trophy for Huge? Coming out with something totally, amazing and winning. And I think I want to see that. I don't know what the combination is, and I think it's going to take the competitors to watch it, realize it's eventually going to go a lot faster, but not if there's not a first event.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's gonna go faster. Yeah.
Exactly.
Talking to Mark, learned a lot of stuff about that. Got it implemented in the sim. We're gonna be trying to move.
So Christine,
next
do you think we should allow magnets to pick up the game pieces?
I mean, I'm always a try and figure it out kind of person, so I would lean towards not, but that's my personal opinion. I'm all about trying to problem solve.
Yeah, I think that's the carrot with it. You can't, if you make sure it's creature in creature combat, it should be biologically inspired, and every creature that we know of on this planet has a mouth, and it uses to pick things up, and it uses it to fight. And so, yeah, I'm a little biased. I put Jaws on mine because I did Lockjaw. I get it. Everybody's going to think that, but the fact of the matter is, I wanted to have it not just be that I'm reinventing the wheels. I wanted to reinvent where those trophies go and where they fight for, and how much are we going to reward somebody for showing up to get the most impossible trophy? What do we want to see? And I think that's where this sport, this particular version for me, I hope changes, where have you ever heard the story about why Happy Meals are so successful?
I don't think so.
Trey will know this story. He had to tell me. Happy Meals are the perfect product because the toy manufacturers give up the rights to have the toys made. McDonald's promotes the toys in order to sell the hamburgers. The promotion of the actual item is given up to sell or by the toy manufacturer, because they want an advertisement for the toys being a toy company and their other toys. Do you realize in a Happy Meals role model that not one person gets a dime and not one person spends any money? It's a model that you have to look at and say, okay, what drives our young kids to want to do something like this? First, create the Super Bowl. Second, give them a high reward for doing something amazing, like having toys and posters and people wearing shirts of your robot, even if you lose. That's my dream of the sport. I don't think you should have to win to be successful here in BattleBots. I think you just have to have a moment, and your moment could be short-lived, but you will have fans from that moment on. People will, all the other engineers who are truly big fans, people who watch Mythbusters, people who watch these type of shows. That's our clientele, smart people. Elon Musk. If I haven't made it where Elon doesn't show up with his robot, I would say we've failed. And I think an everyday guy who shows up with a privateer robot should have a chance to take down Elon Musk. That's exactly how this should work. And if it doesn't, then we've kind of lopsided it one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where this goes. I'm very excited about it, and I think that everybody else should be excited about it too, because I think we're going to see just a level of innovation that we haven't before with BattleBots.
Just forgive me when you watch the video. And yes, it's a little slow at first. We're still kind of getting our legs, as they would say, right? Pun intended. But it's not embarrassing in any way. It's just it's something we're working towards to get it to that level where that's constant back and forth action. And my dream is that it's so good that we have changed the way we do our controls in such a way where if we lose a leg, we can continue to fight. That's my dream. Mark is with his spider. He's got the final nut, dragging it to his corner by the end of the match, and I'm hanging onto his leg, trying to pull him back towards my square. Because if he has the nut and I have him at my square, I get those points, right?
Sure.
Right. See, so it has the makings for a lot of drama.
Yeah.
And I think with Mark's help and us trying to egg it on as having a first match, I think that's the best we could hope for this community, is to everybody kind of encourage us to put together one good prize fight in Vegas.
Yeah.
I got an arena. It's free, right, Trey?
We have an arena. We have fights nightly at BattleBots, Destructathon, and Proving
Isn't that
Grounds.
what
And
makes this more possible? It's not. It's always
it is.
these
Yeah.
things. It's a combination of things. It's timing. It's, in my case, a budget and a sponsor. It's Mark's case. He doesn't have much to add to make his work. And for you, same thing. So no harm, no foul, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like robot combat, like Trey said, there's robot fighting nightly in Vegas, and I think this is just going to continue to grow and grow. So it's super exciting stuff. So if you're watching this episode, please, as always, support combat robotics and stay tuned for more about this creature combat on this episode, as we still have a lot to talk about. But really exciting stuff. And thank you to Trey and Donald and Arthon for coming on to talk about this with me. And I'm sure we'll hear lots more about it. All right. So I know I've been talking a lot about walkers in this episode. Just in general, that basically to make sure that I'm clear, the event that BattleBots had was a creature combat event. So not solely walkers, but robots that are a little bit different, a little bit more unconventional. And I'm really excited to have representatives from a couple of the teams that attended that event for this segment of the show, which is the teams behind Arachnophobia and Armageddon. So I have John, Todd, and Andrew here with me to talk about their robots and that event. So welcome everybody to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
Of course. I'm really excited to talk about this because, over time, I have become much more of a fan of the unconventional robots, because the more time I spent watching robots, I'm like, big hits are cool, things like that. But I like to see something that's a little bit different and, like super innovative. And I think these robots definitely qualify as that. So before I dive into the robots, if y'all could tell me maybe a little bit about your backgrounds, and especially like your relationship with BattleBots and what made you want to build a robot. So
Yeah.
whoever wants to start.
Well, I can go first. Hopefully I'll try to keep you the abridged version. I would say, like I've been fascinated with robots since I was a kid. I watched a ton of movies. I was born in the 80s, so like the Short Circuit movies, 1 and 2, Johnny Five was like a robot that I adored. I made one out of balsa wood when I was a kid. I would say that I didn't really learn about BattleBots, and I definitely didn't learn about the small robot combat world, which is amazing, until like around the 2016, 2018 timeframe. So I remember watching the show and being like, oh my God, this is amazing. Where have you been all my life? BattleBots being the show. And then a few years later, I ended up getting into I learned about the smaller events, right? The insect classes. And my first robot was terrible, which is like probably like everybody's story. But it was super fun. I was really big into Arduino at the time, so my little novel take on building a small robot was I actually made the transmitter and the robot both controlled with Arduino. So I wrote the code that was, that was used to talk between the two of them. And I was lucky enough to meet Andrew here in the last, I guess, like year and a half at some local events. And then he signed up to help me to build this crazy armed bot Armageddon that we brought to BattleBots.
Yeah, so my background is I was always interested in robots like Todd. Like I love the short circuit movies. Like I feel like I almost wear out the VHSs for those two movies. And then when BattleBots came out on Comedy Central, I was like, this is the best thing ever. I was like, this is so exciting, so cool. I wanted to do it back then, but my dad wasn't willing to spend that much on building a robot at the time. So I was really into RC cars. And then as I went to college, I studied mechanical engineering, partially inspired by that, but also by just my general love of like cars and racing. And I've been working for construction OEMs for my career. And then for a long time, I've been doing different things with racing cars. I used to race Spec Miata, for example, did a lot of track days. I actually got into engine swaps for a little bit. I got a 2002 Porsche 911, and then when the engine had some issues, I decided to do a V8 swap with a LS3 from a Chevy. And the funny thing is that while I knew about robot combat for so long, what kept me away from it was like, oh, well, the stuff gets destroyed. Like I'm better off sticking with cars because they don't get destroyed. But the honest truth is like a set of tires for a race car that lasts you a few weekends is like thousands. So it's not really any cheaper to race cars. And then a few years ago, there was a presentation at my work with a bunch of engineers about insect weight combat robots, and they gave away some it's just the electronics for the Viper kits, the finger tech kits. And so that got me like, okay, I guess I can do this. I got a 3D printer. So I 3D printed a little wedge bot and went to the next closest event and actually got fifth my first time out. So I didn't do too bad. And then from there, I've just been super into it. And I, won some plant events and some ant weight events. And then at one of the bigger, I believe it was Hickory Bot Battles. So that's in Hickory, North Carolina, was where I met Todd. And he was like, I really want to build a BattleBot. And I was like, are you serious? Like, you're not just talking? And he was like, yeah, like I quit my job and I'm like willing to spend whatever it takes to do it. So I was like, all right, if you're serious, I'm in. So and I think it's really cool that he was so passionate about doing a bot with arms instead of just a traditional one. And I was on board because I was like, going into BattleBots, nobody's going to win their first season, like if we had built the most like meta 4-wheel drive vertical spinner, we still weren't going to win. So it's way more fun to have something completely new and interesting that really pushes the envelope for what's possible. And yeah, so I'm just really excited to be a part of the team and to get to help make something that I think is really new and innovative and exciting.
Yeah. What about you, John?
I started with actually with the Robot Wars in the UK. I watched a lot of BBC America and the BBC feeds I could get my hands on, and would watch Red Dwarf, then watch BattleBots, or whichever way around it was. And that really got me started. At the time, I worked for a company that made custom machines. So they had all the equipment, all the CNC routers, everything. For some reason, they didn't want to spend the money on a BattleBot and try to compete, especially in the UK. So that kind of got shelved. And then, of course, the BattleBots returned to the air. I think it was on ABC initially about 10 years ago. And I picked that up sometime after it began airing. Been watching ever since. And in season 5, Zoe and her team had rebuilt Chomp as a completely new robot that walked. And I saw that 250-pound weight bonus So you get 500 pounds. And I'm like, this has got to be the thing, you know? So my wife and I worked on it for 2 years. Now, my background is in software and computer networking. So, of course, that's really well spec'd out to build a mechanical beast. But, you know, as a programmer, I think everything can be fixed in code. So, so of course I could do this. After 2 years, we decided we couldn't take on anybody, you know, the lousiest, you know, regular bot that makes it to the TV show would just wipe us out without a chance. You know, you got to have at least 4 legs, 5 if you want to suffer the loss of a leg and keep going. And the trying to armor that is so much weight that we abandoned the project. And we had the opportunity to go to the filming of season 7, where Mark Setrakian did his demo of Stalker for the first time and talked about the new Walker division. And I'm like, as soon as I got home, I sent an email, and Greg responded and said, yes, we really are very interested in bringing new robots into BattleBots, and this Walker division is definitely something we want to make happen. And so went back and dusted off the plans for what at the time was Optimus Stomp, and figured out how to make it work, built what we now call Arachnophobia V1, and it used tubes for legs. And I realized after I built the robot that I can't bend aluminum worth a darn. And so I just crushed my own legs in the process of building it. And I saw Hacksmith Industries with their first attempt with Orbitron. And Rob Barr was saying, hey, you've got so many bolts in here that your robot's going to burn up if it catches on fire, because we can't safely unbolt all this kind of stuff. It took my wife and I 13 hours straight, both of us working on the robot, to attach all the bolts to get our robot assembled so that we could take it and do a static display with it. And then we saw that episode and went, oh, okay, we have to redesign. So back in September, we took Arachnophobia V2 to the proving grounds. And it we got the weapon working, and we were able to demonstrate our mantis hammers. And this is our mantis hammers for my little robot called Itsy Bitsy, that I hope to get to one of the competitions this winter. And so that's the insanity that I've been involved in the last 5 years. I had no idea how many sciences, how much mechanical engineering, how much electrical engineering, how much understanding, how much a wire can, you know, handle before it burns up, you know, how you can smoke your batteries because you just, yes, it says it's rated for that, but not all at once. Like the guy who goes up to the convenience store, hey, the sign says it's open 24/7. Why are you closing? Well, not all in a row.
It certainly is a learning process. Now, Todd and Andrew, I know obviously like the reason for this type of design was rooted in, you know, creativity and innovation, but can you talk a little bit more specifically about why this design? You know, what was it about this type of robot that you wanted to do? Because obviously, like, you could go a lot of ways creatively. I think what you did is super cool, but I'm always curious about like what specifically drew you to this.
Yeah. I'll share my perspective, and then Andrew, if you have anything to add on to it. So this the whole like idea of Armageddon was, like I actually remember the moment. It's one of those things in my life where it's just like never going to go away. So I mentioned I was watching BattleBots, right? And I also, my wife had gotten me. This is where it's kind of funny. I kind of blame my wife for getting me into all this because for Christmas one year she bought me one of those like an electronics kit lesson, like one a day, and I did like all 60 lessons in like 3 days or something. So I gotten obsessed with doing the world of microelectronics, and then I remember watching BattleBots, and I was watching these machines, and they're so incredible. But like there's always kind of what I call like the business end of the robot, right? Like Tombstone's got a giant business end on the front with the lawnmower. Hypershock got that huge vertical bar on the front. Same thing with Witch Doctor, just a little wider. And so when I was watching these episodes, I was thinking like, God, wouldn't it be so easy if you could just reach in there and just grab it and like throw it to the side? Like this thing is like running at your face, trying to hit you. And if you could just reach around, the side of the robot and like either lift it, or just push it to the side, or even some of the other bots that have like little, bunny ears, for when they get inverted. I'm like, oh, well, you could just grab that. And then it's kind of like the 8-year-old is trying to like swing and punch you, and you're just sort of holding, holding it out by the face. And so it dawned upon me that there was like a level of control of the actual fight that you could achieve with more agility, and that would require limbs. And so that was like the spark that like generated this idea of an armed robot. And then we flesh out some of the other details. I talked to Andrew. He was the first one to volunteer, by the way, which is so awesome. Because you really have to have a team to pull this off. I think if there's any other message I would share, or any big message I'd share to your listeners is like, if you're going to build a BattleBot, you just get a team. And if you don't know them, just like go to an event and ask people, like, does anyone want to help? Because that's how I met Andrew. And we have a team of 8 now. But as far as Genesis is concerned, that like seeing the potential weakness and potential advantage of exchanging armor weight and weapon weight for additional motors and agility and movement and angles of control, those were the things that really drove me to this design. So, Andrew, I don't know if there's anything you'd add to that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in different approaches to attacking, because you end up seeing a lot of fights that because everyone's used to having basically their weapon fixed to the front of the robot and they have their forks there too, you get a lot of like jostling for position, and it's really about like, okay, who can get the perfect, like perfectly underneath the other person's weapon or wedge, who can get lined up perfectly. I remember in season 7, I believe it was, Witch Doctor versus Hydra, where the whole fight was just them kind of like rotating around in the center of the arena, trying to see who's going to get that first hit, because it really just came down to like who's going to get a slightly better angle on the other person. And especially with a lot of NHRL fights, I see that happen all the time too, where it's like, oh, this guy's got big forks, and if the other guy gets hung up on him, then he can't do anything. He's got this big spinner that's like a half an inch away from the other robot, and he can do absolutely nothing because he has no way of moving besides his wheels. Same with even a hammerbot. Like hammerbot gives you a lot more flexibility, but you're still ultimately like you can only line up that one position. And so you're always waiting to get in that perfect position. You have no flexibility. If you're head to head and you're going to hit their weapon head on with your hammer, well, you just have to wait till you can move to a better position. So I think, it doesn't necessarily have to be as human-like arms as we've built, but I do think having more articulation and having more options into where you can attack and how you can adjust is like a really huge advantage. And I think that most people have been underestimating the idea of having, that trade-off of more articulation and more control instead of just raw power.
Yeah, I think I love how you frame that. The only thing I would bookend on that too is, Christine, a lot of this is, I'm sure is about the technology available. And I feel like everyone here has definitely seen like the big spinnies, the Metabots, the metagame, whatever you want to call it. Like those spinners have gotten horrendously dangerous. But concurrent or in parallel to that, the technology that allows us to move our arms around, or the technology that would allow Arachnophobia's legs to move around, or Kujaw to walk around, like that gets more accessible, has gotten more accessible as well. And that's something we're really trying to show, is that like you can build an armed or a limbed robot on like without being a bajillionaire. We'll call it.
Yeah, that is very true. It's all in the way that you think about it. Now I'll pose a similar question to John, although you talked about why you built a walker, but my question is, why a spider? Not because it's totally like out of, why would you build that? Because spiders walk, but it's a lot of legs. So I'm curious why you went that direction.
Well, so the initial part was the number of legs was assuming I'd lose 2 legs in combat, because they're not going to take a lot of punishment. When you're looking, the legs as they are about 6 pounds. They're made out of aluminum. And when you're talking 250-pound weight limit, which is what the Walker division had been looking to be, that's already 36 pounds out of your 250-pound limit. And you haven't put motors in, which are the motor and gearbox, 11 pounds. And so we started looking at, how to make it walk, how to make the mechanics of it walk. And I came across James Bruton's channel on YouTube. And he designs robots, including a lot of walking and omni-wheel robots or devices. And he actually published what he calls Open Dog, which is his version of a Boston Dynamics type Spot, but open for anybody to use. So I actually worked on designing cycloidal gearboxes like he was using. And I realized the problem is it's a very high center of gravity, and it's a lot of programming to get that, hey, I got hit, I don't want to fall over. And so my wife and I and a couple of others sat down and said, I think if we go with outrigger arms, think rowboat, think spider, I think we've got more stability. And the robot, we wind up having a lot simpler of a walking mechanism by doing that. And then naturally we went, well, it goes out like a spider. Oh, how about arachnophobia? And so that's how we did it, that it's a more stable design. I've still got a really high center of gravity that really bothers me, but I do have the ability to just let it drop to the floor. And my weapon, or my motors, my gearboxes actually stick through the bottom of the robot, so I wind up having posts that the robot can drag itself across the floor with. So that's why the number of legs. And we redesigned the weapon to the mantis hammers, which are 2 hammers that alternately hit. And we did that partly because we wanted to have 8 legs on our arachnid. I built a hexapod and then went, oh, that's not 8 legs. So my new weapon system is 2 more legs, like a praying mantis, and so that's why it's the way it is.
Totally makes sense. Now that we've kind of talked about the ideas behind the robots, I want to get into the actual event itself, the creature combat event, and just get your all your takes on how that experience was, because I think for anybody who endeavors to build a BattleBot, the experience of actually getting to go to BattleBots and, you know, have your robot there and be around other builders and things like that is a really cool experience, especially being there with Mark, who is, you know, well known for making all sorts of cool creatures and things like that, and robots that are, you know, different and unique and innovative. You know, go ahead and talk about that. We'll go ahead and go back to starting with Todd.
Sure. Yeah. So this is that whole like knowing the path, walking the path kind of philosophy, right? So you know, it's funny. I realized we were doing our little intros, and I didn't even talk to you at all about what I've actually been doing for the last 20 years. So my background was in doing project management in the financial services world, which has nothing to do with robotics. But it does have a lot to do with hanging around a bunch of like famous people and like not losing your cool, and maybe talking to like cameras and things like that. So as like team captain, thankfully I was able to kind of jump in and do some of that stuff. But yeah, like going to BattleBots and actually bringing your machine that you've been working on for a year is very surreal, because it's like this thing that you've worshipped, you know, online, and you're like, oh, someday I'll get there, and then you get there, and it's awesome. And you know, it isn't like I'll say this: it's not when you get there, like it's not an intimidation kind of a thing. It feels like home. Like I kept saying to my wife and my team, like it felt like I was at a regular insect class event, but like a much bigger building with bigger robots. But like the vibe wasn't any different. So like the staff is super duper friendly. Like they were trying to help us with as much as they could. As a like thing, I'll tell you, we struggle with putting a safety mechanism for our arms, because they each one rotates on like three axes of motion, and so trying to find a way to lock two arms that can rotate in 3 different degrees of position is super hard. And so we had Rob Barr and then some of the welding team and some other folks actually brainstorm with us a way to like lock those arms in position and help us, like the welders there actually helped like put it together for us. So it was just incredibly supportive. Like I can say, you know, our first time out there, the other thing is, you know, you have a plan, and then, you know, people always like to say like, well, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, you know, this is more like you have a plan, and then you get there and you're like, okay, what are the things that we haven't finished yet, even though we've been working 12-hour days, and just rushing to get all that stuff done. But like I said, the staff was really supportive. Greg actually came over and asked us like, what do you guys want to do? But getting a chance to, like, the support was awesome. I'd say also getting a chance to just have a conversation with Mark Setrakian, with Donald Hutson, and, you know, other folks that were there about not just their robots, but like their vision and like the way that they think, like the way that Mark approaches, like I was kind of picking his brain on like our custom like control system and the way the robot works on Armageddon. And it was just so cool to, because when else am I going to get a chance to like, hey Mark, what do you think about this? Like it's not like I hang out in Hollywood. And he's a very humble dude too. It's not like he carries that, you know, sort of like higher than thou. He's just another builder, but he's a super great guy. And he built a lot of amazing machines, including Stalker, which we got to see a lot, which was cool.
Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, so I found it to be a great experience, and it is really interesting because they make it look really like flashy for the show, so you get kind of a vibe that like, oh, this is like super professional, like serious. And then you get there and it's like, oh, this is just a bunch of mechanics and engineers hanging out in a warehouse. It's not that big a deal. Like it's still exciting, it's still cool, but it's also like, okay, I don't have anything to be worried about. You know, we've just got a little machine shop over the side, and we've got robots in every state of disrepair everywhere, and you know, and everyone's really like just wants to hang out and just talk about robots and building stuff and fixing things. um you know, and we got to see their Vegas live show. That's a lot of fun. If you're ever out in Vegas, definitely it's worth the tickets, because it's the same kind of robots, same heavyweights that you see at the championship. They just got them set up to do it every other night, and you'll see Witch Doctor and Hypershock and a variety of other ones, some of them custom just for the show. But yeah, it was fun to watch that, and it's really great what they're doing out there, and how they're maintaining everything to keep it going while they don't have their next season figured out.
Yeah.
I had neglected to mention that. So we actually, just due to some technical difficulties, both with Armageddon and with Arachnophobia, we decided to just cancel our fight on Friday night. But that was actually the best time, because the show that they put on that for that day was like they pulled out all of the awesome stuff that they possibly could. Yeah, as fans and now as participants, it was a really great weekend for us to be out there.
Yeah. And what about you, John? Because the last time I saw you, you were on the other side of the coin at BattleBots.
People think I'm crazy because they asked me how it was, and I'm like, it was fantastic. It was the best thing ever. Well, how'd you do in your exhibition matches? Oh, we never got in the battle box to fight. We couldn't get the robot working. Well, then how was it good? Because everything else was awesome. Todd talked about it already. The people that work there are just willing to bend over backwards. Kelly, the welder, helped put a plate in to help protect our batteries and to mount the rest of our electronics too. And we underestimated the amount of wiring we had in the robot. When it was done, if you go up the street from BattleBots, there's the Atomic Weapons Museum. And if you look at the mock-ups they have or the pictures they have, the inside of Arachnophobia right now looks kind of like the Trinity bomb. And it's like, okay, I knew there were a lot of wires, but the actual connecting every single one of them, my wife bent over backwards, and I swear she probably has a half-inch shorter fingers now from all the welding and cutting and stripping and tightening down wires and routing wires and all that kind of stuff. Mark Setrakian, as Todd said, was awesome to talk to. He was like, do you mind some advice from you? Please. Absolutely. And he solved a problem I've been working on for over a year with the knees of the robot. Donald Hutson on Saturday night was like, we've only got Sunday left. What can we do to help you get Arachnophobia into the box? And I explained, I've got these boards that I was putting together that needed to be soldered. And he's like, Nathan on our team is an awesome soldering guy. He'll work with you in the morning until they're done. And sure enough, he did, and they were done. And on Monday, we're sitting there, my wife and I were working on Arachnophobia, and 3 of Todd's team showed up going, well, our flight's not for another 16 hours or something stupid, so we thought we'd stop by and help. And so they really refreshed our wiring, got them run so that the motors chopped the wires in half, and spent 2-3 hours. And that's just the spirit of BattleBots. It's not, I'm going to massacre you, Todd. It's, Todd, let's go out and let's have some fun with some new robots. And hey, I've got this extra thing if you need it. Oh, have you got one of these? And it's just a real camaraderie between everybody behind the scenes. Awesome being a fan, awesome being a builder. It really is a fantastic experience, even though we didn't get to walk the robot around in the arena.
with a
Yeah.
yet. Where I
With a
always
yet.
yes
And
at the end of the
everybody.
statement, John. It's gonna move. We're gonna make
Yep.
it happen. I'm really glad you brought up the camaraderie piece, because I don't know how many people who watch your videos, Christine, or listen to the podcast, like really know what the vibe is like. But most of the people that we hang out with in the robot community, both small and large, are much more interested in seeing your awesome machine move around and do cool stuff than they are about like demolishing you. Which is, part of like I think is a unique thing to robot combat and robotic sports versus like other things where like, oh, professional racing, like, oh, your car isn't working, good luck out there. Like we don't want that. Like we want our machines to be in top form before we go try and break the other one.
Yeah, that is very true. And I think it is something unique to combat robotics as a competitive, type of thing versus other things that are competitive, where I think you find a lot more, negative sentiment towards opponents and things like that. So yeah, I love the community and the way that everybody comes together to put out the best fights possible, which is I think what everybody wants. Now, my last question that I think is a very important one, especially since, BattleBots really wants to see more unique robots. It seems like on the lower level, I think there's a big interest in the, more unique robots. Why should somebody build something like this that is going to be more unique and innovative versus just your traditional spinner robot?
This is like
Well-
the best question ever. Oh, John, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, let me quote when Zach Lytle interviewed Reese Ewert, not Reese, Jake, and asked him that same question. His response was, "Oh, run very fast. Don't do it." No, in all fairness, it's all about like Todd has talked about so much throughout this. It's that camaraderie, it's that friendship, it's that getting together with people as crazy as you are and just seeing what works. Okay, well, that robot died in its first hit. I guess I won't do that again. And it's the one thing that I would caution people to, you're talking about a lot of stuff that you may or may not be experienced with. The second time I got my welder out to put together, I was working on a static version of the robot. I figured, let's see if I can do that as a starting point. I set my pants on fire, got third-degree burns, $130,000 in medical bills.
Oh no.
Third-degree burns. Fortunately, I live in Western Michigan, and Corewell Health has a fantastic burn clinic. And so they were able to nurse me back to health, and my leg is now 100%. But, don't forget that you're working with big, heavy equipment that can do real damage. And I will ask Copilot AI regularly, how likely is this to kill me? What kind of damage can this do to me? With as fast as the legs are swinging, with this power of motors, can that break my leg if it hits it? It takes getting set on fire once to decide you never want that to happen again.
Yeah.
Oh.
And John, I only laughed at the setting yourself on fire thing because I have done that many times with my own welder. So not to third-degree burns. I'm so sorry that happened. So
No,
just so you didn't think I was a cruel human being for laughing at the fire thing, because I think we all injure ourselves periodically while we make these insane machines. So
yeah, and you get away and realize, wow, that was just a scratch or a cut. Okay, I got some blood on my drill press. That could have been really bad. That could have, that drill press could have pulled me in and really messed up my arm and taken my fingers out, which, since I work on computers, that would be a very bad thing. So, Christine, I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Why should somebody build something like this?
Oh, yes. Because you need to do something new. I've heard other people talk about it, so it's not my mental brainstorming here. There seems to be do it by rote. You know, Todd talked about, you'll get the same little insect class, uh, you know, 30 times in a row, and then somebody will come with something different, and oh, well, that was cool. And the same thing with BattleBots. You do a four-wheel drive robot with a vertical spinner on the front, and that's what, 60% of the robots in BattleBots, something like that. And so, we need some new blood, and we need some people who had never thought about doing this to get out and get with folks in the community and, have a great time and a safe time, and get some new robots out there, because maybe you'll build the next robot that's amazing. Like Mark Setrakian didn't start with, but did Mechadon a long time ago. And if you haven't seen Mechadon, go search it on YouTube and go find it. You gotta see Mechadon. It's the thing of nightmares and dreams.
I couldn't have summed up a better description of it. What about you, Todd and Andrew? What do you think of why people should build these robots?
Oh my God. Andrew, do you want me to go first? Or you want to go first?
Actually, so I think you should build it because that's kind of actually what everyone wants to see when they first start thinking about fighting robots. They think about Gundam, they think about a Voltron or something. They think about all the different kind of mechs and things they've seen on TV or in movies, and they're like, oh, I want to build that, I want to fight that. And then when you start getting into it, you're like, well, that's too difficult, that doesn't really exist, we're going to just build something that's a lot simpler. And the thing is that something like Mechadon, people were a lot more willing to experiment in the early years of BattleBots because they still had that kind of like, we don't know what works yet, so let's try anything. But the technology definitely wasn't there like it is now. So in the last 5 or 10 years, like brushless motors and controllers have gotten so good and so much more affordable that it's really possible to do a lot of things with robotics that was so much more difficult or just inaccessible. You can see it with the humanoid robots and the robot dogs that are now commercially available at somewhat affordable prices. And they all use different forms of brushless motors and things like that. And that's not just for big companies, that's for anyone now. So like Armageddon uses basically all skateboard motors, and drone motors. And those are all much more affordable and commonly available. We're still using the VEST controllers, which most of the BattleBots teams use now. But yeah, we figured out how to make them act more like a servo, and we're trying to make that something a little more consistent and better documented, and something that we can share with other people to make their ideas come true. Because I think we're on the verge of all that technology becoming a lot more accessible and a lot easier. And once people realize, like, I don't have to just buy a hobby servo or buy some really expensive thing, I don't have to learn all this crazy stuff. Once we make it to where it's like, no, like, look, you can just hook up a few things and you can have a joint that moves like an arm, or a leg or whatever you want. I'm hoping that that will inspire people to be more creative and come up with a lot more stuff that's like, this is what I dreamed of doing. And maybe it's not the most tactically perfect design, but it's a lot more fun.
If I could make one comment on something you said, Andrew, the affordable drones. Watching Kujaw take on the two robot dogs, I believe they're from Unitree, was really cool. But I don't want to just see a bunch of off-the-shelf robot dogs running around in an arena with an angle grinder strapped to the front of it or whatever. So hopefully we can inspire the next generation of builders to follow our lead by not following our lead. and go off on a novel tangent instead of just buying off the shelf. That's a great way to start, but
Yeah, and
be
those
afraid
commercial
to go out.
bots,
Yep.
really aren't made for combat in any way. They're not going to last very long. And so what I think Armageddon in particular is trying to do is trying to develop uh, sort of almost a platform or a framework that you can use to make, okay, this is something that's actually like battle hardened kind of design. It's not just something that's supposed to be used in a house or used in like a nice clean environment or light duty. Like this is how you do the same kind of thing. And, like industrial robots are very big and heavy and expensive because they're trying to get like micron repeatability. They're trying to grab a bolt and put it in the exact same place over and over again with perfect, repeatability. Well, we don't need that in BattleBots. We can be off by quite a bit and still do effectively what we're trying to do. So, that's the thing is the technology's caught up to where you can have, Armageddon, we can potentially lift like 700 pounds with each arm. So we can potentially lift, 1,400 pounds with both arms, or therefore throw a 250-pound robot pretty high in the air. And so, we're not just like, it's gonna move around and look cool, but it's actually going to be really weak and slow. It's like, we want it to be potentially competitive with any other BattleBot. And we want to share that technology with everyone else so that, whether you want to build a 30-pound or a 12-pound, or even a 3-pound, hopefully you can eventually take that same kind of conceptual technology and some of the same software and electronics and make your own, whatever you want, whatever kind of thing you can imagine.
Yeah. Want to close this up on that, Todd?
Yeah. A bunch of awesome stuff has already been said. So I think, like, I was sitting here spinning in my head, like, what are the main things? So the first thing I would throw out there, because the question is, well, why in the world build something this crazy? And I think I was trying to address this actually in some of the video I did with BattleBots, but whatever. The book Gearheads. Have you read that, Christine?
I have not.
Okay. It is an awesome book. I'm pretty sure it's Gearheads. It's basically the history of like how robot combat came to be. So it's like talking about those machines in like Southern California where it was like half art, half like mechanics and like robots, and they were trying to blow each other up, and there was no Lexan. It was very safe, obviously. So people like in a parking lot watching these like ragtag machines that they built in their garage fighting each other. I really loved the artistry of that. And when I see robots built today that are not only like effective, but also just gorgeous machines or very clever or like all three, it really like makes the hair stand up on my arm. And I'm like super excited because somebody is really trying to go for reaching for it. I really love when people say, "Oh, you can't do that." And honestly, there were a couple people that I talked to before pursuing building Armageddon who were like, "Yeah, that's going to be a lot of money and a waste of your time. Like, you should probably build a 30-pound version or like, do this." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I want to build a 250-pound robot with arms that can pick robots up and chuck them across the arena." And they're like, "Okay, all right." So there's that aspect of it. Like I remembered our past, if you will, like our history of the sport. And then I've seen things progress. I've been building the small robots for the last 8 years. And this is what I mean. Like, I think Andrew and John touched on this, right? Where it's not like purposeful, but people are trying to win. And so they see a design that wins, and then they like, they follow it or steal some ideas from it, and then they change their machine. And so then you end up with a huge field where a lot of the robots look, very similar and attack in very similar ways. So it reminded me of this question that I posed on our. There's a lot of Discord servers. I'm sure you know. You have your own. Um, there's one for like every region of robot builders, and so I posed this question on the North Carolina Discord server of like, how do you guys define winning? Like, what is winning to you? in this sport. And like, I genuinely wanted to hear perspective, and there were a lot of different opinions shared, right? You know, some of it's more classical, like winning events, winning fights. NHRL has their awesome like tiered structure of like, you know, you're in the semifinals and then, you know, you win the tournament, all this stuff. That's great, but for other people, winning is something very different. Like for me personally, winning is building something that was just, you know, an idea and has like and pushes those boundaries of like what's possible. I guess candidly, it's 2025. Like we have underground like robot boxing rings in San Francisco, if I read the news correctly. And you know, I saw a video the other day of a company that made a mechanical steed that you can actually ride, that has 4 legs, and you just run off onto the hillside like in The Sound of Music. So I'm like, okay, guys, like we've got we've got all these robots out here that are doing crazy stuff. Maybe let's try doing something a little bit different. And it isn't a judgment call. I say, if you want to build, you know, the world's deadliest vert, you go get it and, you know, crush it. But if you want to build a robot that looks like a giant spider that runs up and, you know, crushes the other one, or if you want to punch robots in the face with your arms, or God knows what other inspiration people might find in nature and their own imagination, like go build it. And to me, like if you built something that's awesome, you won. Like Stalker would be terrible at fighting, but it is a beautiful machine, and I love watching it move around every single time. And so I just really hope, kind of what Andrew was saying, that we can inspire folks, not only as an idea, but like building these machines at this scale demonstrates that like it's possible. And like we'll show you how you can do it without having to spend $5,000 like per servo or whatever. You can do custom stuff, which is what we've done. Andrew, I think you've used a lot of open source coding, in addition, you know, to build things up. And John, you kind of said a similar thing. So yeah, I would love for the next 5 to 10 years of robot combat to manifest like another path of robot combat or sports or whatever, where like you get these mechs and these walkers and these, you know, crazy limbed bots just like duking it out, and you don't need to hide behind a half an inch of Lexan in order to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I would love to see it. I think that, you know, like has been said earlier in this interview, the different, you know, abilities and ways that you could make robots has come a long way, especially in the last 5 years. And I love to continually see that level of creativity and innovation keep going up. So here's hoping that we're definitely going to see more of that soon, at every level of combat robotics. Well, I thank you all for joining me. It was so much fun to talk about these robots. And I think this is going to be an episode that gets a lot of people thinking, and maybe ruminating on some things, is my hope. But yeah, so if you're watching this, build a cool robot, I guess. And keep watching, subscribe, like, share, comment, engage, you know, all of those things. Let's keep growing combat robotics, and we'll see everybody next time on the show.